Don't let the system transfer again. Ethan Cole stood in the rain beside his aging pickup, one hand gripping his scarred metal toolbox, while the termination letter curled on the back seat behind him. Through the hospital's wet glass doors, red warning lights flooded the control room. Mara Bennett pressed a red folder containing the 4:17 p.m. safety report against the glass as Grant Mercer reached for the intercom switch. "He no longer works here," Grant said calmly. Ethan watched the ICU windows flicker. The patients still do. 3 hours earlier, the basement operations room had smelled of floor wax, damp concrete, and overheated wiring. Fluorescent tubes buzzed above a polished table where Grant had placed a disciplinary report with Ethan's name printed in heavy black letters. Ethan stood across from CO Evelyn Cross, his Navy work jacket darkened at the shoulders by rain. A thin line of water had gathered beneath his left boot. Wade Rusk, the hospital systems contractor, sat beside Grant with a silver pen aligned precisely along his folder, his expression carrying the patient concern of a man explaining something unfortunate but necessary. 7 minutes, Grant said. You left your assigned station for 7 minutes during an active weather advisory. Ethan's hands remained still at his sides. Mara's car wouldn't start. That is not a facility's emergency. She had worked 2 shifts. Her mother was waiting for her. Grant offered a restrained smile. Kindness is admirable, Mr. Cole, but hospitals cannot operate on personal judgment. Evelyn lowered her eyes to the personnel form. She was not cruel, and that made the room colder. Cruelty could be challenged. Procedure wore a clean shirt and spoke softly. Ethan reached inside his jacket and placed a damp report on the table. The paper made a quiet slapping sound against the wood. At the top, beside the time 4:17 p.m., he had written, "Transfer relay responding twice. Interlock heat above tolerance. Full load test required before storm conditions." Grant's receiving signature sat beneath the warning. "Read the last page before you sign anything," Ethan said. Wade leaned forward, but his gaze did not move toward the recommendation. It moved toward the handwritten serial number in the margin. "We inspected that assembly," he said. "The system meets certification standards. Certification isn't a load test. You are not the certifying engineer." "No," Ethan replied. "I'm the man who heard it fail." The fluorescent hum filled the pause. Evelyn's fingers stopped above the termination line, and for one moment her attention shifted from Grant's report to the water-stained warning. Then Grant turned the page face down. "Ethan has been under considerable personal strain," he said gently. "A single father needs stability. I believe he has allowed fear to affect his professional judgment." Ethan looked at the blank signature line, acknowledging that his warning lacked technical basis. He thought of Lily's paper star taped inside his toolbox lid, the one that said "Dad fixes what matters" in purple crayon. He slid the form back and signed. "I can accept losing this job," he said. "I won't sign that the danger never existed." Evelyn signed the termination order herself. Outside the narrow window, thunder rolled over the parking structure. Ethan folded the paper once, placed it inside his jacket, and walked toward the door without raising his voice. Behind him, Grant gathered the safety report before the records clerk could reach it. As Ethan pulled the door open, Mara stood in the corridor with rain on her sleeves. She saw Grant pass the report to Wade instead of placing it in the official file tray. And beneath Grant's palm, visible for only a second, was a handwritten instruction neither man had mentioned. Delay until after donor event. Mara saw the handwritten instruction vanish beneath Grant Mercer's palm, and for half a second the corridor seemed to narrow around her. "That report belongs in records. It has not been validated. Then why are you hiding it?" Grant turned toward her with the mild, regretful expression of a man correcting an employee who had misunderstood a policy. The basement lights flattened the color from Mara's face, and the air carried the sharp smell of rainwater, copier toner, and overheated dust. Wade Rusk slid the damp report into his leather folder with 2 careful fingers. "No one is hiding anything," Grant said. "We are preventing an unverified document from creating unnecessary alarm." Ethan stopped several feet beyond the doorway. He did not turn all the way back. Only his shoulders shifted beneath the wet navy jacket, as though some part of him had heard the report being taken but refused to make the room's cruelty louder than it already was. She saw the signature, he said. Mr. Cole, your employment has ended. The signature hasn't. Security will escort you upstairs. The words came softly, almost kindly. That was how Grant made humiliation sound reasonable. A security supervisor named Paul Danner approached from the far end of the corridor, one hand resting near the radio clipped to his belt. He knew Ethan. They had shared bad coffee during winter power drills and once spent an hour freeing a jammed service elevator together. But now Paul's eyes settled first on the termination paper in Ethan's hand, then on the grease beneath his fingernails, as if the document had changed what those hands meant. Two maintenance workers stood beside the vending machines, pretending to study the buttons. One whispered, "Knew he'd been pushing too hard." The other answered, "Guys like that always think they know more than the engineers." Ethan heard them. Mara knew he heard because his thumb pressed once against the folded edge of the paper. He did not look over. Instead, he bent to pick up a dropped glove near the wall, placed it neatly on a supply cart, and stepped aside so an orderly pushing oxygen tanks could pass without squeezing between him and security. Even while being removed, he was making room for someone else. Evelyn Cross remained inside the conference room. Through the glass panel, she watched Grant speak to Mara, watched Wade hold the folder against his chest, watched Ethan wait without protest. She could not hear every word, but she saw something that did not fit the version she had just signed. A supposedly unstable employee standing calmer than everyone who claimed to be managing him. "Mara," Grant continued, "you have worked 16 hours. Fatigue can make patterns seem meaningful." "I worked 12, she said. "Then stayed 4 because ER was short." "Exactly my point." He offered a sympathetic nod. "You are exhausted, grateful to Ethan for helping with your car, and understandably upset. That does not make you an objective technical witness." The sentence struck with surgical precision. He did not call her foolish. He simply removed her authority piece by piece until concern became fatigue, evidence became gratitude, and professional judgment became emotion. Mara tightened her grip on the red folder she still carried. Inside were medication reconciliation sheets, a staffing form, and one blank incident report she had planned to complete before leaving. She looked at Wade's leather folder, then at the thin line of water running from its corner. The safety report was still damp enough to leave a crescent-shaped stain. "I saw the time," she said. 4:17. Grant's smile faded by less than an inch. "You saw a piece of paper. With your signature. A receiving mark is not an approval. Then let records decide what it is." The corridor fell quiet except for the low mechanical hum behind the walls. Somewhere above them, a cart rolled across a tile seam with a hollow rattle. Wade shifted his silver pen from one hand to the other, and Evelyn's gaze moved to that small motion. "Ms. Bennett," Wade said, "there are technical distinctions here that facilities staff sometimes misunderstand." Ethan finally turned. "She understands what a warning looks like." Wade gave him a patient smile. "And this is precisely why boundaries matter. You repair equipment. I certify systems." Ethan's eyes dropped to the edge of the folder. The handwritten serial number he had placed in the report was partly visible where the paper had not slid fully inside. Wade's thumb covered the final 4 digits. "Then you should know that serial," Ethan said. Wade did not look down. "I know the system. That isn't what I asked." Paul shifted uneasily. Grant stepped between them without appearing to do so, angling his body just enough to block Ethan's view. "We are not continuing this discussion in a public corridor," he said. "Mr. Cole, turn over your badge." Ethan unclipped the worn plastic badge from his jacket. The photograph was 6 years old, taken before grief had carved deeper lines beside his mouth. He placed it in Paul's open hand rather than Grant's. "Make sure Noah gets the evening checklist," he said. "The East transfer panel needs a thermal scan before the storm reaches full strength. You are no longer authorized to issue instructions. Then call it advice. We do not need it." Ethan looked past Grant toward Evelyn behind the glass. She had moved closer to the door but had not opened it. For one breath, their eyes met. Ethan did not plead. He raised the folded termination paper slightly, then pointed once toward Wade's folder. It was not accusation. It was a request to look where everyone else was being told not to look. Evelyn's hand reached for the door handle, but Grant spoke before she opened it. For everyone's protection, I recommend we document that Mr. Cole is refusing to leave promptly. Paul looked at Ethan, embarrassed. Come on, man. Let's not make this harder. Ethan nodded. I won't. He turned toward the stairwell, walking beside Paul rather than ahead of him like a prisoner. As he passed Mara, he paused only long enough to notice her shaking hands. He took the pen from the top of her red folder, clicked it closed so the ink would not stain her uniform, and handed it back. Write down what you saw, he said quietly, before someone tells you that you didn't. Mara watched him disappear up the concrete stairs. Then she opened the blank incident report against the wall and wrote the time at the top. 4:31 p.m. Behind her, Grant told Wade to return the safety report after the language had been corrected. Evelyn heard that sentence clearly. Her eyes moved from Grant to the damp folder, and for the first time she seemed to notice that the receiving signature on Ethan's report had not been written today. The ink was dry, slightly faded, and pressed deep enough into the paper to show it had been signed before the meeting ever began. The pressure mark beneath Grant Mercer's signature was older than the meeting, and Evelyn Cross knew it. The ink had settled into the paper hours before Ethan was brought downstairs, which meant the warning had not been created in anger after his dismissal. It had been received, handled, and then described as if it had never existed. But before Evelyn could ask why, the elevator doors opened at the end of the corridor and released a gust of rain-cooled air carrying the faint smell of wet pavement and engine oil. 7 minutes earlier, Mara Bennett had been standing beside her aging sedan beneath a flickering parking lot lamp, turning the key for the 4th time. The starter clicked once and died. Her phone vibrated against the dashboard. 3 missed calls from her younger sister. 1 message from the rehabilitation center where their mother was recovering after surgery. Mara closed her eyes and rested her forehead against the steering wheel. She had worked 12 hours, then stayed for more because the ER was short 2 nurses. Her shoes were damp, her shoulders ached, and the rain had begun slipping through the cracked rubber seal above the driver's door. She did not ask anyone for money. She did not call a tow truck she could not afford. She stepped back into the rain, lifted the hood, and stared at an engine she understood only well enough to know it was not going to fix itself. Ethan saw her from the service entrance. He had been carrying a thermal scanner in one hand and the 4:17 p.m. safety report folded inside his jacket. Noah Kim had agreed to cover the east panel while Ethan crossed the lot. But 7 minutes was still 7 minutes, and Ethan knew Grant would count every one of them. Battery? Mara asked when he approached. Maybe. I can wait. You've already waited 16 hours. Rain tapped against the raised hood in quick silver beats. Ethan set his scanner inside the doorway where it would stay dry, walked to his pickup, and opened the rear door. His scarred metal toolbox sat beside a child's purple backpack and a paper grocery bag containing 2 cans of soup, a loaf of bread, and the generic cereal Lily liked even though she always pretended the name-brand box tasted better. Taped inside the toolbox lid was a crooked paper star colored in purple crayon. Dad fixes what matters. Ethan's fingers paused. Over it for only a second. Lily was waiting at the after-school program, and every extra minute meant another late fee he could not comfortably absorb. Rent was due in 9 days. The truck needed tires before winter. None of those facts made Mara's car start. He carried the toolbox through the rain and knelt beside the front wheel. Water soaked through the knee of his work pants almost immediately. Try it once, he said. The engine clicked. Again. Another click. Ethan checked the battery terminals, then followed the ground cable with 2 fingers until he found the loose connection beneath a film of corrosion. It isn't the battery, he said. The ground is barely holding. Mara watched him remove the cable, clean the contact point with a small wire brush, and tighten it again. His hands moved without hurry, though she could see the hospital clock glowing red above the service doors. "You're still on shift," she said. "Noah has the panel. Grant will use this against you." "He might." "Then stop." Ethan looked up, rain running from his hair to the collar of his navy jacket. "Will your mother stop needing you because Grant writes something down?" Mara had no answer. He turned back to the cable. There was no speech in the gesture, no demand to be admired. Just a man making one damaged connection hold because someone needed to get home. When he reached into his jacket for a shop rag, the damp edge of the safety report slipped free. Mara caught the page before it fell into a shallow stream running along the curb. "Sorry," she said. Then she saw the time at the top. 4:17 p.m. Beneath it was the same transfer loop code she had photographed from an ER wall monitor 3 nights earlier, when every outlet on the north side had blinked for less than a second. The interruption had been so brief that no incident had been opened. A charge nurse had told her it was probably routine switching. Mara had not believed that, so she had taken a picture with her old phone. "I've seen this code," she said. Ethan stopped tightening the cable. "Where?" "Yeah. Sunday night. Before the software patch?" "I think so." He took the report from her carefully and wiped the rain from its corner with the cleanest part of the rag. The paper already bore Grant's receiving signature, the handwritten serial number from the transfer assembly, and the recommendation for a full load test before the storm. Ethan read the page once, then looked toward the hospital windows. "Did you report it?" "I mentioned it." "That isn't what I asked." Mara's face tightened, not in anger but recognition. "I was told not to turn a half-second flicker into a safety event." Ethan nodded as though he had heard that kind of sentence before. He did not criticize her. He opened his toolbox, removed a clear plastic sleeve used for wiring diagrams, and slid the damp report inside. Then he pulled a carbon copy from behind the original. "Keep this." Mara stared at him. "Why?" "You saw the code before the storm. Nursing safety should have a copy. You know I'm not management." "Good." The answer surprised a small laugh out of her, the first sound all day that did not feel tired. She hesitated before taking the paper. "I'm the elected nursing representative on the Safety Council," she said. "But Grant treats it like a suggestion box." Ethan only handed her the sleeve. He did not ask her to defend him. He did not ask her to mention the 7 minutes or tell Evelyn why he had left his station. "Send it somewhere one person can't erase it," he said. Mara used her cracked phone to photograph each page. The rain made the screen difficult to read, so Ethan held his jacket over the phone while she uploaded the files to the council's protected mailbox. A progress bar crawled forward, stopped at 82%, then flashed network error. "Did it send?" Ethan asked. "I don't know. Save the originals." "What about you?" "I remember what I wrote." He closed the hood and nodded toward the driver's seat. The engine started on the first turn, settling into a rough but steady idle. Mara reached for her wallet. Ethan raised one wet hand. "Buy your mother something better than hospital coffee." "Ethan, go." She looked at the purple paper star inside his open toolbox, then at the report in her hand. "Why are you doing this when they're already looking for a reason?" Ethan latched the toolbox and lifted it from the pavement. "Because being punished for helping doesn't make helping wrong." From beneath the hospital awning, Grant had watched nearly the entire exchange. He walked toward them with an umbrella angled perfectly over his own shoulders, his expression composed. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "technical documents should remain within authorized channels." Mara had not told him what Ethan had given her. She had not shown him the first page. Yet Grant's eyes went directly to the plastic sleeve under her arm. "Do not bring the 417 report to the council," he added. The words were quiet, professional, almost protective. But Ethan looked at Mara, and Mara looked down at the time printed across the wet page. In that moment, both of them understood the same thing. Grant was not afraid the report was wrong. He was afraid someone else might keep it long enough to prove it was right. Grant's words followed Mara into the hospital like a hand at the center of her back. "Do not bring the 417 report to the council." He had spoken quietly enough to sound protective, but Ethan had heard what lived beneath the courtesy. Control. Now, less than 3 hours later, the same report lay inside Mara's red folder while emergency lights pulsed across the control room walls. She has a personal reason to support him, Grant said. He repaired her car. He gave me a safety report after creating a disciplinary problem for himself. Before he was fired. The exchange came fast, each sentence clipped by the electronic chirp of alarms. Rain streaked the broad glass behind Evelyn Cross, turning the hospital parking lot into a blur of red ambulance lights and black pavement. Mara stood near the doorway, still in her damp navy scrubs, one hand around the folder so tightly that the cardboard edge pressed white into her fingers. Ethan remained outside the secured technical entrance with his toolbox at his feet and a phone held to his ear. Grant had ordered security not to admit him. He had also ordered the intercom channel muted twice. Each time, Dr. Samuel Reed had turned it back on. "This is not about gratitude," Mara said. "The warning existed before he helped me. A photograph on an old phone does not establish sequence. The paper has your signature." Grant looked toward Evelyn rather than Mara. "A receiving mark confirms that a document crossed my desk. It does not certify the employee's conclusion. Ms. Bennett is exhausted, emotionally invested, and outside her technical scope." The cruelty of the sentence lay in how cleanly it was dressed. He did not accuse Mara of lying. He simply arranged the facts until her judgment looked unreliable. Evelyn held out her hand. "Let me see it." Mara crossed the room and placed the report beneath the white task lamp beside the control console. The plastic sleeve was still clouded in one corner where rainwater had dried. At the top sat the time, 4:17 p.m. Beneath the warning, Grant's signature pressed darkly into the page. Evelyn studied it, then looked at the incident dashboard. "Open the service history," she said. The IT analyst hesitated. "Full history or active alarms?" "Full." Grant folded his hands. "During a live event, that may distract from stabilization. Then we will stabilize and verify at the same time." His face remained composed, but the tip of his right thumb rubbed once against the side of his index finger. The analyst entered the command. Rows of green and amber text filled the monitor. Cooling checks. Generator readiness. Transfer relay status. Then a blank interval appeared between 5:03 and 5:15 p.m. "Why is that empty?" Evelyn asked. "Routine synchronization," Grant answered. The analyst turned from the screen. There was no synchronization request. Then an automatic restart. No restart is recorded either. For the first time, the room slowed. The rain seemed louder against the glass. A red alarm reflected across Grant's silver watch, appearing and disappearing with each pulse. Outside the technical door, Ethan's voice came through the open line. "What time does the gap begin?" Grant reached toward the console. "He is not authorized to participate." Dr. Reed moved his hand over the intercom switch first. 5:03, he said. Ethan was silent for 2 breaths. "That was after the meeting." "Coincidence," Grant said, "or a corrupted log caused by the storm." Ethan looked through the narrow wired glass window. His face was pale under the fluorescent light, but his voice remained level. "Was the storm over the hospital at 5:03? No one answered immediately. Evelyn glanced at the weather display. The first lightning strike near the medical campus had been recorded at 6:41 p.m., nearly 90 minutes later. Grant adjusted his cuffs. Electrical instability can precede visible storm activity. It was plausible enough to keep the question open. Evelyn did not accuse him. She turned to Mara. "Show me the photographs." Mara took out her cracked phone. The screen lit unevenly, a pale fracture running from the upper corner through the clock display. She opened 3 images from the ER monitoring wall. The same transfer loop code appeared in each, photographed 3 nights before the storm. The first image showed the date clearly. The second showed the code and a row of outlets switching status. The third had the top corner obscured by the crack in the glass. Wade Rusk stepped closer. That interface is generated only after the Monday software patch. Mara looked at him. I took these Sunday night. Wade's mouth opened, then closed. The faint hum of the cooling fans filled the pause. Evelyn's eyes moved from the phone to him. Are you certain about the patch? That was the scheduled deployment. Scheduled, Ethan repeated through the speaker. Not necessarily installed. Wade recovered quickly. A preliminary interface could have been cached during staging. It does not prove a system fault. The explanation was reasonable on its surface. Technical systems did produce cached displays. Test screens did remain behind after staging. But Ethan was no longer looking at the error code. He was looking at the lower right corner of Mara's photograph, where a tiny identifier marked the active configuration package. Mara, he said, hold the phone under the lamp. Grant stepped toward her. We do not need to crowd the room with speculation. Ethan did not raise his voice. Just put it in the light. Mara tilted the phone beneath the task lamp. The cracked screen caught the white glow, and the configuration number became visible beneath the fracture. Ethan read it once. Noah Kim, the young technician standing near the thermal camera, leaned toward the central monitor and typed the number into the maintenance index. His eyebrows lifted. That package wasn't authorized until Monday. Exactly, Wade said. Which supports what I just told you. Noah shook his head. But the install record says it went live Sunday at 11:42 p.m. Mara checked the timestamp on her first photograph. Sunday, 11:57 p.m. 15 minutes later. Grant moved between Evelyn and the screen, not enough to look obstructive, only enough to narrow her view. A contractor may have completed deployment early. That is an administrative discrepancy, not evidence of danger. Who authorized it? Evelyn asked. I would have to review the work order. Then review it. Before Grant could answer, a sharp pop came through Ethan's phone from the east service corridor. Noah looked toward the thermal camera feed. A white-hot bloom had appeared behind the transfer panel. Do not open it, Ethan said. Back away. It may only be surface heat, Wade replied. Noah, back away now. The authority in Ethan's voice did not come from title or volume. It came from certainty shaped by attention. Noah stepped back just as a thin line of orange light flashed along the panel seam. The insulation inside gave a muffled snap, and the room filled with the dry smell of scorched plastic carried through the ventilation return. Evelyn turned toward the secured door. She did not order it opened. Not yet. But she looked at Ethan differently now, not with trust, but with the first unwilling recognition that his caution had just protected one of her employees. Run a limited thermal scan, she said. No physical access. Record everything. Grant's jaw tightened. That gives a terminated employee influence over an active response. It gives us another data point. Ethan lowered his phone and watched Noah angle the camera across the sealed panel. The thermal image sharpened. The hottest point was not the relay Ethan had warned about. It came from the interlock assembly beside it, a component bearing a clean silver label that read new replacement. Ethan stared at the label, then at the serial number visible beneath it. His expression changed by almost nothing, but Mara saw it. What is it? She asked. Ethan leaned closer to the wired glass. That isn't the serial Wade certified. That isn't the serial Wade certified. Ethan's words reached the control room through the open intercom, quiet enough that the cooling fans seemed louder around them. Wade Rusk looked at the thermal image, then at the silver label fixed to the overheating assembly. You cannot verify a serial number through wired glass. I wrote the original down. From memory? From the report Grant took. The red emergency light moved across Wade's face in slow intervals. Beside the console, Grant Mercer rested one hand on the back of an empty chair, his fingers spread with deliberate calm. Evelyn Cross looked from the glowing panel to the damp safety report beneath the task lamp. She still had no reason to accept Ethan's conclusion without proof. A technician dismissed hours earlier could remember a number incorrectly. A replacement label could have been entered wrong. Heat inside one assembly did not establish fraud, sabotage, or even system-wide danger. We test it, Evelyn said. Grant's hand tightened on the chair. During an active weather event? A limited branch. That introduces unnecessary risk. Then propose a safer way to verify it. Grant glanced at Wade. Wade adjusted his cuff and stepped closer to the console. The laundry branch can be isolated without affecting clinical loads. My team can handle the test privately and report the result. Ethan's eyes remained on the thermal feed. Record it. Wade gave a thin smile. We document all testing. Record the sound. This is not an acoustic diagnosis. Then it should cost you nothing. Dr. Samuel Reed lowered the clipboard he had been holding. The small movement seemed to settle the room. Record everything, he said. Evelyn nodded. 2 witnesses. IT captures the data. Noah performs the physical steps. Ethan advises from outside until I say otherwise. Grant's expression did not break. For everyone's protection, I want it noted that this is being done against my recommendation. Noted, Evelyn replied. Now move. Noah Kim carried the thermal camera toward the secondary laundry panel with a portable microphone clipped to his jacket. Rain hammered the service windows above the corridor, and the smell of scorched insulation lingered in the ventilation like burnt rubber. Ethan stood behind the secured door, one palm resting against the cold metal frame. His toolbox remained near his boots. Through the narrow glass, he could see Noah's shoulders rising too quickly. Slow down, Ethan said. I'm fine. Your breathing says otherwise. Noah exhaled. Better. Again. Noah drew another breath and let it out slowly. The tremor in the camera image eased. Wade watched the exchange with faint impatience. This is a routine isolation test, not a rescue operation. Ethan did not answer him. Noah. Confirm load. Laundry branch at 18%. Confirm medical separation. A facilities engineer beside the console checked the schematic. Clinical circuits isolated. Read the breaker position aloud. Closed. Camera on the interlock. On it. Each answer was repeated by a second technician and timestamped by IT. Ethan insisted on the sequence not because he wanted control, but because pressure made people skip the step they believed they would remember later. Evelyn began to understand that. He was not performing certainty. He was building a record. Open the manual isolation, Ethan said. Noah reached toward the lever. Stop. The word cut cleanly through the corridor. Noah froze with his glove inches from the handle. What? Your right glove. Noah looked down. A shallow tear ran across the base of the thumb, nearly invisible beneath the reflected red light. Wade sighed. That glove is rated well above this panel's operating voltage. Ethan opened his toolbox, removed his own insulated pair, and held them through the security pass-through. Ratings assume the glove is intact. We are losing time, Grant said. Then we should stop wasting it arguing about a 10-second safety check. Noah exchanged the damaged glove for Ethan's. Inside the toolbox lid, the purple paper star shifted slightly in the draft from the ventilation fan. Dad fixes what matters. Evelyn saw it through the glass but said nothing. She watched Ethan fasten the pass-through door, leaving himself without protective gloves while Noah took the position nearest the equipment. The action was too small to be dramatic. That was why it mattered. Ready, Noah said. Open isolation. The lever moved with a heavy metallic pull. Cut laundry load. A technician entered the command. The fluorescent lights above the service corridor dimmed, then steadied. Manual transfer, Ethan said. Noah placed one gloved hand on the control. On 3. No. Listen first. The room became still. A wheeled stool stopped scraping near the rear console. Mara lowered her cracked phone. Grant's thumb ceased rubbing against his finger. Even the whispered conversation between 2 nurses at the doorway faded beneath the constant breath of the air conditioning. Noah moved the control. Clack. A fraction of a second passed. Clack. For seconds later, the monitor flashed the same transfer loop code from Ethan's report. An amber warning turned red. No one spoke. The double strike of the relay seemed to remain in the room after the sound itself had vanished. Ethan did not say he had warned them. He did not look at Grant or Wade. "Return to isolation," he said. "Do not let it complete the cycle." Noah reversed the control. The warning held for 2 seconds, then cleared. Wade recovered first. A repeated relay response can occur during low-load testing. This proves a localized timing issue, nothing more. "Remove the branch fuse," Ethan said. Wade stepped toward the corridor door. "My technician should handle evidence collection." Evelyn placed her hand flat on the safety report.
No.
Noah removes it. IT records. Dr. Reed witnesses. The fuse goes directly into a sealed evidence bag. Grant turned to her. "Evelyn, we can resolve this internally without creating the appearance of misconduct. I am trying to establish what happened, and I am trying to keep an equipment fault from becoming a public accusation. No one has made one." Her gaze moved briefly to Wade. "Yet." Noah waited until the panel temperature fell, then opened the protected compartment under camera. He removed the fuse with insulated tools and placed it on a white ceramic tray. The metal cap was darkened near one end. The plastic body had not burst, but a brown crescent had formed beneath the surface, the kind of stain heat left when it returned again and again. Ethan leaned toward the wired glass. "Rotate it." Noah turned the fuse with the tool. A second heat mark appeared along the opposite side. Dr. Reed frowned. "Could tonight's surge do that?" "Not evenly," Ethan said. "One event burns fast. That cooked slowly." Wade folded his arms. "Visual inspection cannot date thermal damage." "He is right," Ethan said. The agreement caused Wade to pause. "So send it to the lab. Don't let anyone carry it in a pocket. Don't let it disappear into a contractor's case. Seal it, log it, and let someone independent decide." Mara looked at him across the room. He had been given the first piece of evidence that supported him, and his instinct was not to claim it. It was to protect it from himself as carefully as from everyone else. Noah lowered the fuse into a clear evidence pouch. IT printed a time-stamped label. Dr. Reed signed first. Noah signed second. Evelyn took the pen, hesitated, then added her name as the third witness. Grant watched the bag seal with the expression of a man listening to a door close somewhere beyond his reach. "Now the assembly label," Evelyn said. Noah angled the camera toward the silver plate. The serial number filled the central screen. Mara opened Ethan's photographed report on her phone and read the handwritten number aloud. "NLS 88421C. Noah read the label. "NLS 77109A. The two numbers were not close enough for a transposed digit or a tired technician's mistake. Wade leaned toward the monitor. The certification could reference the system family rather than the installed unit. Ethan shook his head once. "Serials identify individual hardware. You repair hospital equipment, Mr. Cole. You do not administer Northline's inventory system." "No," Ethan said. "But I know the difference between a model number and a serial number." The air conditioning clicked into a higher cycle. Somewhere near the wall, someone set down a paper cup without drinking from it. Evelyn pulled the original acceptance file onto her screen. The certified serial matched Ethan's handwritten number, not the unit overheating behind the panel. "Which component did we pay for?" she asked. Wade did not answer immediately. Grant stepped in smoothly. "This may be a routine substitution. Supply shortages often require equivalent equipment. Then there will be a substitution form." "I'm sure there is." "Show me." "The records may be with procurement." Evelyn turned to her assistant. "Freeze the current work orders, purchase records, and camera retention. No files are to be deleted or overwritten." Grant's voice remained measured. "That is a disproportionate response to one branch test. It is a preservation order. People may misunderstand it. Then they can wait for the facts." Ethan saw Noah glance toward him with something close to relief. Minutes earlier, the young technician had been treated as a pair of hands following instructions. Now his careful work had created evidence no one could dismiss as an angry former employee's story. Ethan tapped the wired glass once to get his attention. "You did that right," he said. "Not I was right. You did that right." Noah straightened. Mara lowered her phone, and the tightness in her face eased for the first time that night. Grant moved toward the console and spoke quietly to Wade, too low for the room microphones. But IT had already turned the directional camera toward them. Wade's eyes flicked up and noticed. "Let me handle the procurement discrepancy privately," he said more loudly. "There is no need to alarm clinical staff." Ethan looked again at the panel schematic. Behind the clean replacement label, a faint pencil line curved toward the old mechanical bypass route. Someone had marked it before the new system was certified. Someone had known the automatic transfer might fail badly enough to need a manual way around it. "Who drew that?" Evelyn asked. Wade said nothing. Grant answered too quickly. "It has been there since the original installation." Ethan leaned closer. The graphite crossed over a section of conduit added only during last month's upgrade. The mark could not be old. And beside it, almost hidden beneath the panel edge, someone had written two small words in pencil. "Use when locked." The pencil words beneath the panel edge were barely larger than a fingernail. "Use when locked." Ethan stared at them while the room behind the glass settled into a silence too careful to be calm. "That mark was made after the upgrade," he said. "The graphite crosses the new conduit." "A technician may have added a contingency note," Wade replied. "Then where is the contingency procedure?" "Not every field notation becomes a formal document. This one tells someone how to get around a locked system." The printer beside IT stopped mid-cycle with a soft mechanical click. Under the red emergency lights, the sealed fuse bag, the mismatched serial number, and the damp for 17 report lay in separate pools of white task light. No longer small pieces of disagreement, but parts of something beginning to take shape. Evelyn Cross stood with one hand resting on the back of a chair. She had not apologized to Ethan. She had not reopened the secured door. But she was no longer asking whether he had overreacted. She was asking what else had been hidden. "Pull every work order connected to that assembly," she said. "And procurement." Grant Mercer's voice remained smooth. "We are in the middle of an active event. A document search can wait until the clinical load is stable. The clinical load is unstable because the documents may be false. That is an assumption. Then the records will clear it." The IT analyst opened the maintenance archive. At first, the screen showed exactly what Grant had promised. A completed upgrade, a certified replacement, a signed acceptance checklist. Then the analyst widened the search to include deleted drafts and temporary uploads. A gray email thread appeared, recovered from an archive folder. The sender was Wade Rusk. The subject line read, "Full load test risk." Evelyn stepped closer. The message had been sent 2 weeks earlier. Wade warned that the original interlock showed repeated heat stress and might fail under a complete transfer test. He recommended replacing the unit before certification and warned that the hospital's donor event might need to be postponed. Grant's reply appeared beneath it. "Use temporary certification. We revisit after Saturday." No one spoke for several seconds. Rain pressed against the glass in long silver lines. Mara's old phone vibrated on the console, but she did not look down. Wade inhaled slowly through his nose. Grant reached for a glass of water and discovered his hand was not as steady as he intended. "That was a preliminary discussion," he said. "Temporary certification is a recognized administrative measure. When the equipment is safe under temporary conditions," Ethan replied. "The email says it might fail under full load." Grant turned toward him. "You are outside your authority." Ethan looked at the ICU load display. "So is the fire." Dr. Reed's mouth tightened. Not quite a smile. Evelyn scrolled farther. Attached to the email was an estimate for a replacement interlock assembly. The purchase had been approved. Payment had cleared 6 days ago. "Find the receiving record," she said. Procurement produced a delivery receipt. The part had arrived at St. Catherine's Central Dock, signed for by a Northline supervisor. The serial number matched Ethan's handwritten report, NLS 88421C. The component behind the panel carried another number entirely. So where is the part we paid for? Mara asked. Wade answered without looking at her. Possibly held for installation. The invoice says installed. Accounting descriptions are sometimes generalized. The acceptance checklist says tested. That may refer to system-level verification. Each answer sounded possible until placed beside the last one. Ethan watched the pattern form. Wade was no longer denying that the part existed. He was separating every record from every action, hoping no one would place them on the same table. Evelyn ordered inventory opened. A warehouse clerk appeared on video from the supply building, rainwater shining on his safety vest. He scanned the shelf location from the receipt. An unopened cardboard box sat beneath a fluorescent lamp, Northline's logo printed along the side. For one breath, Grant's shoulders loosened. There, he said. The replacement was never missing. The clerk cut the tape under camera. Inside lay a fitted block of black foam shaped around the outline of a large electrical component. The cavity was empty. The relief left Grant's face so quickly it looked like a light going out. Wade stepped away from the central camera and lowered his voice. We should discuss chain of custody before drawing conclusions. Evelyn did not look at him. Do not move that box. Seal the room. That could alarm staff. Good, Mara said softly. Maybe alarm is what happens when warning fails. Grant turned to her with the same practiced concern he had used in the corridor. Ms. Bennett, this is becoming far beyond your clinical role. Mara's fingers tightened around the red folder, but Ethan spoke before she had to defend herself. She documented the first visible fault. She photographed a screen. She preserved a record your system did not. Grant's tone sharpened by 1 degree. You are using this crisis to elevate personal grievances. Ethan could have pointed to the email. He could have said the words Grant had earned. Instead, he looked toward the ICU status board, where the reserve estimate had fallen from 40 minutes to 28. No, he said. I'm asking you to stop making this about us. He turned to Dr. Reed. Which areas lose power first if the reserve drops below 20? The question changed the room. Reed called for clinical priorities. Mara moved to the whiteboard and began listing ICU, operating rooms, NICU, ventilator support, medical gas controls. Ethan took the folded termination paper from his jacket and turned it over. On the blank back, he drew 3 columns. Must hold, can reduce, can isolate. He did not use the evidence to demand reinstatement. He used the paper that ended his employment to calculate how to keep strangers alive. Evelyn watched him ask nurses what they needed instead of telling them. She watched him listen when Mara corrected the estimated ER load. She watched him hand Noah the marker and make the younger technician repeat each priority aloud. Trust did not arrive as sympathy. It came as a sequence of observable choices. The reserve display is wrong, Ethan said after, comparing the discharge curve with the battery temperature. How wrong? Reed asked. It says 28 minutes. We have closer to 23. Grant looked at the monitor. The manufacturer's estimate is validated. At 70 degrees. Ethan pointed to the sensor. The battery room is 86. Wade checked the reading and wiped one hand against his trouser seam. The software should compensate. It didn't compensate for the relay either. Evelyn turned to IT. Verify. The analyst ran the corrected calculation. 22 minutes and 40 seconds appeared on the screen. The room fell quiet again, deeper this time. Not because Ethan had performed a miracle, but because the clock had become honest. We need the replacement component, Noah said. The warehouse clerk searched the box and found a transfer slip folded beneath the foam. It had been moved from central storage at 5:08 p.m., during the same 12-minute gap missing from the service log. The receiving location was not another storeroom. It was listed as temporary contractor custody. Wade's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, silenced it, and slid it face down into his pocket. Evelyn noticed. Who has the part? I need to check with my team. Call them here. This is not the appropriate setting. A hospital with 22 minutes of reserve is the only appropriate setting. Grant stepped closer to Evelyn, lowering his voice as if offering counsel. You should not let a terminated technician and an exhausted nurse steer an internal investigation. We can stabilize first and review privately tomorrow. Ethan heard him through the open microphone. For a moment, the old instinct rose in him, the desire to make Grant feel the weight he had placed on everyone else. Then Ethan looked at Mara, at the red folder pressed against her ribs, at Noah wearing his gloves, at the patient load numbers descending by the minute. Revenge would feel immediate. Proof would last. Freeze access logs, he said. Badge entries, cameras, procurement edits, everything after 5 o'clock. Grant's head turned sharply. You do not have authority to order that. Evelyn answered before Ethan could. He does not. Ido. She faced IT. Preserve all footage and account activity. No verbrites. No deletions. No private review. The analyst began issuing holds across the system. One by one, green confirmation boxes appeared. Then the loading icon stopped on the camera archive outside the main control room. What is it? Reed asked. The footage from 5:03 to 5:15 is unavailable. Grant exhaled through his nose. Another synchronization gap. The analyst shook his head. No. The camera was redirected. By whom? Evelyn asked. A pause. The access request populated on the screen. It had been made with Grant Mercer's administrative credentials. Wade looked toward the nearest camera. Grant did not. His gaze stayed fixed on the wet 417 report beneath the lamp, as though he were calculating how much of the night could still be contained. Then Noah called from the warehouse feed. They found something else. The clerk held up a printed transfer label peeled from the empty box. A delivery time was stamped across the bottom. 5:11 p.m. Beneath it was the identifier of the person who had authorized the move. Grant Mercer. Evelyn looked around the control room at the cameras, the witnesses, the sealed evidence, and the reserve clock now falling below 21 minutes. Move everyone to the basement command room, she said. Open the recording system. Bring the original report, the fuse, the invoice, and every access record. Grant's professional mask remained in place, but a bead of sweat moved slowly from his temple toward his collar. The truth was no longer something that could be corrected in a private folder. It had become too heavy for any closed door to hold. The basement command room had once been the place where Ethan Cole lost his job. Now every chair faced the same long table, and every red emergency light seemed to point back toward it. The rain rattled against the narrow ground-level windows while security sealed the doors. IT activated the recording system, and Dr. Samuel Reed arranged the evidence in plain view. The damp 417 report, the sealed fuse, the purchase invoice, the empty box transfer label, and the access log showing Grant Mercer's credentials. Ethan entered last, carrying his scarred toolbox in one hand. His navy jacket was darker at the shoulders, his hair still wet, and the termination paper remained folded in his pocket. He did not take the chair at the head of the table. He stood beside Noah Kim near the technical schematics, as if he were still only there to help someone else finish the work. Evelyn Cross remained at the far end beneath the wall clock. She had the authority to end the meeting with a sentence, but she said nothing. She wanted the room recorded before anyone understood which story would survive it. Grant sat upright with both palms visible on the table. Wade Rusk placed his leather folder beside him, the same folder that had briefly held Ethan's warning. Mara stood near Dr. Reed with the red file pressed against her side. 2 senior nurses, the IT analyst, a hospital attorney, and the head of security filled the remaining seats. No crowd whispered. No one laughed. The pressure came from order, from names spoken for the record, from the small red light above the camera that meant every word now had a place it could not quietly disappear from. Before we begin, Grant said, I want it documented that this gathering is interfering with active emergency management. Evelyn looked toward the reserve clock projected on the wall. 17 minutes and 12 seconds. It is documented. Then I recommend we defer personnel accusations until the system is stable. This is not a personnel hearing. It is becoming one. He turned slightly toward the attorney, his voice measured and reasonable. A recently terminated employee has influenced a fatigued nurse, redirected technical staff, and created an atmosphere where ordinary administrative discrepancies are being treated as deliberate misconduct. Mara's face tightened, but Ethan did not look at Grant. He opened his toolbox and removed the old system schematic. The purple paper star inside the lid shifted in the draft from the ceiling vent. Dad fixes what matters. Evelyn saw it again. So did Mara. Grant continued. Mr. Cole may sincerely believe he heard a fault. Ms. Bennett may sincerely believe her photographs are significant. But sincerity is not evidence. Agreed, Ethan said. Grant paused, as if he had expected resistance rather than agreement. Ethan laid the schematic flat. That is why the evidence should speak before any of us do. Dr. Reed placed the first item beneath the document camera. The 417 report appeared on the wall screen, its water-stained corner enlarged until the fibers of the paper were visible. Time received, Reed said. 4:26 p.m. signature, Grant Mercer. Grant leaned back. As I have explained, receipt is not approval. Employees submit unverified concerns every day. For a moment, the explanation seemed to restore order. A received warning was not automatically a correct warning. An executive could sign acknowledgement without agreeing with the conclusion. The hospital attorney nodded once, and even Evelyn did not challenge the distinction. Retention shifted back toward Grant. He was not denying the signature anymore. He was placing it inside a process that made it seem harmless. Next, Reed said. Mara handed over her cracked phone. The first ER photograph appeared, showing the transfer loop code 3 nights before the storm. The server confirmation followed, proving 3 images had reached the Nursing Safety Council mailbox before Ethan's dismissal. Grant folded his hands. That establishes only that Ms. Bennett photographed a display. It does not establish a dangerous condition. The interface package was installed early, Wade added. That explains the timing discrepancy. The attorney looked toward IT. Is that possible? Technically, yes, the analyst said. Wade's shoulders loosened. Then we are mistaking poor documentation for intentional concealment. The room seemed to tilt back toward him. If the software had gone live early and the warning had been received but not validated, then perhaps everything still fit inside negligence, confusion, and a storm arriving at the wrong moment. Grant looked at Evelyn with controlled disappointment, as if asking her to recognize how far the meeting had drifted. This is precisely why internal review should happen after the emergency, he said. People are filling gaps with suspicion. Ethan traced one finger along the schematic. What time did the replacement assembly arrive? Wade answered quickly. Last Tuesday morning. What time was it signed into central storage? I would need to check. The receipt says 9:14. Then 9:14. And when was it installed? Wade's eyes narrowed. As the acceptance documents indicate. Ethan looked up. That is not a time. The air conditioning seemed suddenly louder. Evelyn's hand lowered slowly onto the acceptance file. Wade opened his folder. Installation occurred during the upgrade window. Which day? Thursday. Noah spoke from beside Ethan. The system log shows no maintenance isolation Thursday. Grant turned toward him. Mr. Kim, you are here as technical support, not as an investigator. Ethan shifted half a step so Noah was no longer standing alone in the line of Grant's attention. He answered a technical question. Grant's tone stayed polite. And he is a junior employee under considerable pressure. Then ask the records, Ethan said. IT searched the isolation history. No shutdown Thursday. No work permit. No safety clearance. Wade recovered. The assembly may have been staged without full isolation. Behind an energized panel? Ethan asked. Under qualified supervision. Whose? Wade closed the folder. The first crack in his comm appeared not in his voice but in his thumb. which pressed hard against the leather edge until the skin blanched. Evelyn looked toward the evidence table. Show the invoice. The purchase invoice appeared next. Replacement interlock assembly. Paid in full. Installed and tested. The certified serial matched Ethan's handwritten number, not the overheating component inside the panel. Grant responded before Wade could. Procurement language is often generalized. The hospital may have purchased a replacement while retaining the original assembly temporarily. Then why certify the new serial as installed? Evelyn asked. A clerical error. And the empty box? Contractor custody, Wade said. The component may have been moved to a staging area. At 5:11 p.m.? Mara asked. Grant turned toward her. Ms. Bennett, technical custody chains are not your field. Ethan's eyes remained on the transfer label. Neither is nursing safety, apparently. Grant looked at him. Ethan did not raise his voice. You called her tired when she preserved a record. You called me emotional when I filed one. Every warning becomes a personality problem when the paperwork points upward. The room held still. No triumph lived in his words. Only wait. Evelyn looked at Mara. Continue. The transfer label appeared on screen. Authorized by Grant Mercer at 5:11 p.m. during the missing 12-minute log interval. Grant took a slow breath. I approved contractor custody because the unit had not yet been commissioned for use. Your acceptance file says it was already installed, the attorney said. The file is inaccurate. Which part? Evelyn asked. The installation language. The serial? Possibly. The test certification? Potentially. The warning. Grant's eyes moved toward the report. Unverified. For one heartbeat, it seemed he might still succeed. He was turning each contradiction into a separate administrative defect. A bad invoice, a premature certification, a misplaced component, a missing log. Serious, perhaps, but not yet one act. Not yet one hand. Then Dr. Reed placed the sealed fuse beneath the camera. The brown heat crescent appeared on the screen. Independent lab review will determine the age of this damage, he said. But the branch test reproduced the same relay fault described by Ethan before the storm. Wade straightened. On a limited load. That does not prove main system failure. Correct, Ethan said. It proves the warning was testable. He looked at Evelyn. And someone chose not to test it. The reserve clock dropped below 14 minutes. A sharp alert sounded from the wall display. ICU stable. NICU pending. Manual bypass status. Disabled. Noah looked at Ethan. Ethan opened the old schematic and pointed to the mechanical route marked in pencil. We need 3 people. Noah on the secondary panel. Me at the main transfer. Mara and Dr. Reed coordinating clinical readiness. Grant pushed back his chair. He does not have authorization to direct hospital operations. Evelyn still did not answer. She looked at Grant instead. Did you disable the manual? Bypass? No, did Wade? Not to my knowledge. Then why is it locked? The system may have done so automatically after the fault. Ethan shook his head. Not with that message. He pointed to the screen. Prevent unauthorized intervention. That is an administrative command. Grant's jaw tightened. You cannot know that from one line. I know what machines say when they fail, Ethan replied. And what people make them say when they are afraid someone will look. Security brought in the access summary. The camera outside the control room had been redirected during the missing interval. Wade had entered using Grant's card. A maintenance cart had left with a Northline box. Grant did not deny the access this time. Mr. Rusk had routine authorization. IT spoke carefully. There is no digital authorization record. Verbal authorization. From whom? The attorney asked. Grant looked toward Wade. Wade looked toward the red recording light. For the first time, neither man answered. Evelyn turned to Ethan. Can the bypass be restored? Maybe. Can you guarantee it? No, the room shifted. Grant seized the opening. Then we are about to hand control of a hospital to a man who admits he does not know if his plan will work. Ethan met Evelyn's eyes. Anyone who guarantees an untested rescue is selling you another certificate. The sentence landed without force, and that was why it stayed. Evelyn looked at the sealed fuse, the wet report, Mara's phone, the empty box label, and the clock losing seconds above them. Then she removed the temporary access badge from the security envelope and placed it on the table between herself and Ethan. "Before I give you this," she said, "I want the last audit opened." The IT analyst turned toward the main screen. A protected system file had finished restoring in the background. Its title appeared one line at a time. Manual bypass administrative override. User credentials: Grant Mercer. Secondary login: Wade Rusk. Time executed: 5:11 p.m. Grant rose halfway from his chair. "That file requires context." Evelyn did not look at him. "Sit down." The room froze. The analyst's finger hovered over the command that would reveal the full activity trail, including the camera footage and the reason entered for locking the bypass. Ethan picked up the temporary badge but did not clip it on. Not yet. On the screen, the restored video file waited behind a single gray button marked play. The IT analyst pressed play. For 2 seconds, the screen showed an empty service corridor washed in gray fluorescent light. Then Wade Rusk entered the frame carrying Grant Mercer's access card in one hand and a Northline equipment box on a maintenance cart. The timestamp read 5:08 p.m. He looked once toward the camera, stepped beneath it, and raised his arm. The image shifted toward the ceiling. 3 minutes later, the administrative log appeared beside the footage. Manual bypass disabled. Reason entered as prevent unauthorized intervention. Credentials: Grant Mercer. Secondary login: Wade Rusk. No one in the command room moved. The projector fan hummed. Rain tapped against the narrow windows. Somewhere above them, a monitor alarm sounded once and then settled. Grant's pen slipped from his fingers, struck the table, and rolled until it stopped against the sealed fuse bag. "That footage requires context," he said, but his voice had dried at the edges. Evelyn Cross kept her eyes on the screen. "Then provide it." Grant swallowed. Mr. Rusk was securing the system against interference from a terminated employee. At 5:11, the hospital attorney said. Ethan had not yet left the building. The dismissal decision had been made. "The bypass was not mentioned in the termination meeting," Dr. Reed said. Wade shifted in his chair. "We were protecting the hospital from an unapproved manual transfer." Ethan stood beside the schematic with the temporary badge still loose in his hand. He did not look satisfied. He looked tired. "You removed the only safe manual option before the storm reached us," he said. Wade turned toward him. "You cannot call it safe without testing it." "Then why mark the route?" Ethan pointed to the pencil note on the enlarged panel image. "Use when locked." Wade's mouth tightened. The video continued. At 5:11, the maintenance cart returned into frame. The Northline box was gone. Wade entered the control room with Grant's card. The camera remained aimed at the ceiling for 12 minutes. When the feed returned, Wade left with the leather folder tucked under his arm. The same folder that later held Ethan's report. Evelyn finally turned to Grant. "Did you authorize him to disable the bypass?" Grant looked at the red recording light above the camera. "I authorized a temporary lockout while we reviewed Ethan's conduct." "Did you authorize removal of the replacement interlock?" "I authorized contractor custody." "Did you tell me there had been no official warning?" Grant's gaze dropped to the damp report beneath the task lamp. "I said there had been no validated warning." Dr. Reed lifted the page. "This warning predicted the relay fault reproduced tonight. After the fact." "No," Mara said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. She placed her cracked phone beside the report. "The council server received these images before Ethan was fired. The code was present 3 nights ago. His report was signed before the meeting. The fault existed before the storm, before the dismissal, before any of us had a reason to defend him." Grant opened his mouth, then stopped. The room did not turn on him. That made the moment heavier. No outrage rose to give him something to fight. Only evidence remained. Evelyn looked toward the reserve clock. 10 minutes and 34 seconds. Open the technical door, she said. Security unlocked it. The metal latch released with a hard mechanical snap. Ethan stepped inside the command room for the first time since being escorted out. Water darkened the hem of his work pants. His toolbox left a faint wet rectangle on the floor where he set it down. Evelyn picked up the temporary badge and clipped it to his jacket herself. "You have emergency technical authority under Dr. Reed and my office," she said. "All actions recorded. All clinical transfers confirmed." Ethan nodded once. "No shortcuts." "Agreed." Grant pushed back from the table. "You are placing hospital operations in the hands of a man you terminated for abandoning his station." Ethan looked at him, not angrily, almost sadly. "I left for 7 minutes to help a nurse get home to her mother. You used 12 minutes to erase a warning and lock a rescue route." Grant could not answer. Evelyn turned to security. "Suspend Mr. Mercer's and Mr. Rusk's access credentials. Preserve their devices and all hospital records. Neither leaves the operations area until legal has completed the transfer of custody." Wade's face lost color. "You cannot seize private property. Hospital-issued devices," the attorney said, "and the records are under preservation hold." Grant's hand closed around the edge of the table. "Evelyn, think carefully. If this becomes public, the hospital is not its reputation," she said. "It is the people upstairs depending on us to tell the truth." Then the reserve clock dropped below 10 minutes. A sharper alarm broke through the room. "NICU ready. ICU ready. Operating rooms ready." Ethan unfolded the old schematic. "NOAA secondary panel. Ready. Mara. Confirm clinical transfer sequence with Reed. Ready. IT. Keep the audit visible." Evelyn moved to the central console. "I'll read each confirmation." They left Grant and Wade at the table with security and entered the technical corridor as a team. Ethan did not lead by rushing ahead. He made NOAA repeat the first isolation point. He waited for Mara to confirm that every ventilator circuit had backup support. When the NICU called for another 30 seconds, Ethan stopped with his hand on the main lever. "We don't move until they're ready." The reserve clock fell to 8 minutes and 41 seconds. Grant watched from behind the glass, his own reflection layered over the red warning displays. "They are ready," Mara said at last. "Proceed." NOAA opened the secondary route. Ethan moved the mechanical bypass one controlled notch at a time. The old linkage resisted, metal grinding against metal. A relay snapped once. Only once. "East clinical load stable," IT called. "ICU stable," Reed answered. "Operating rooms stable." Ethan shifted to the second point. Sweat gathered at his temples despite the cold corridor. The old system had not been designed for speed. It had been designed for hands that followed sequence. At the third transfer, a warning flashed. Ethan stopped. "Medical gas?" "Holding," Mara said. "NICU. Holding." "Then clear the fault manually." NOAA entered the reset. The red panel light changed to amber, then green. Across the central screen, the hospital load stabilized in sections, one floor at a time. ICU, NICU, operating rooms, emergency department. The reserve clock stopped falling. For a long moment, no one trusted the stillness. Then a nurse's voice came over the radio, trembling with relief. "All critical equipment stable." Ethan did not raise his hands. He did not smile at Grant. He walked the corridor with NOAA and checked 3 boards in person before returning to the command room. When he came back, Dr. Reed placed the final audit on the screen. The chain appeared in order: the 417 report, Grant's receiving signature, the early error images from Mara, the missing 12-minute log, Wade using Grant's badge, the removed replacement part, the false installation invoice, and the administrative lock on the bypass. Evelyn stood behind the chair where she had signed Ethan's termination. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "did you disable the bypass before or after you told me there was no warning?" Grant stared at the screen. His lips moved once, but no sound came. Wade looked away from the camera. The attorney closed her folder. Mara slowly set the red file on the table, no longer holding it against herself like armor. Dr. Reed placed Ethan's damp warning beside the termination paper. One document had tried to protect patients. The other had punished the man who wrote it. No one applauded. No one spoke. The rain had softened to a faint whisper against the glass. The projector fan turned steadily, and somewhere beyond the basement walls, the hospital breathed on uninterrupted power. Ethan looked at the 2 pages for a long time. Then Evelyn lifted the termination order and said, "This decision is frozen effective immediately." Ethan's expression did not change. "The patients are safe," he said. "Now make sure the truth is." Justice had begun, but it had not yet healed what the night had broken. And when Evelyn asked whether he would return in the morning, Ethan looked toward Mara, toward Noah, and toward the paper. Star inside his open toolbox before answering, "Not if everything stays the same."